So with the last video that I put out, I wanted to start something new. Most of y'all tune in and watch me do, fitness related videos and stuff, but, mind, body, and spirit, they're like a tripod. And, if you're just focusing on one and you're not focusing on all three, your tripod's not going to be very stable. It's just going to tip over, and, life's going to get the better of you. So each week, I'm going to put out a video. When during the week, I don't know. I'll try to get some sort of timeline or whatever. But I'm going to put out a week on various topics, probably mostly related to post-traumatic stress, or just, operational stress, stressors in life, some things that we could do to get better. But if there's any topics that anybody wants to cover, you can text me if you got my phone number, or give me a call, or message me on Facebook, Instagram, or just leave a comment in the YouTube section, and it might be something we can address. All right, so first I want to read something that I wrote, I think it's like 6-7 years ago, when I was going through a pretty rough time. I call it the Warrior's Burden. Some of you have seen it before, but I've posted it on Facebook. When looking at a group of soldiers getting ready for battle, Heraclitus once said, out of every 100 soldiers, 10 should not even be there. 80 are just targets. 9 are the real fighters, and we should be lucky to have them, as they will carry the battle. But one is the true warrior, and he will bring the others back. The warrior shoulders a burden not felt by the others. He is responsible for bringing the others back, and often is unsuccessful, as people die in combat. No matter how hard the warrior tries to prevent it, death is a reality of war. However, that does not change the warrior's burden. When the warrior fails, he carries the guilt and the shame in his heart. He cannot stop. He cannot grieve. He must continue the fight, as the others rely on him. The warrior's burden. The warrior receives new soldiers, and the cycle starts over. Each cycle amplifies the warrior's burden as he carries more and more guilt and shame. Eventually, the warrior's burden is so great he breaks. His time to grieve is now, but the pain is so terrible he bears it deep in his soul. The warrior's burden. The warrior attempts to control his emotions, as he does not want those depending on his strength to share his pain, but he is unsure how long he can go. The warrior's burden continues. So, again, I wrote that a while back when I was getting overwhelmed with a lot of my own stressors, and it all started in April 8th, 2000, Yuma, Arizona, when the Osprey crashed. I lost some dear friends. I lost one of my machine gun squads, and I lost my first mentor in the Marine Corps, first mentor ever, really, in life, Joe Alvarez, and I was hurting pretty bad. I remember we had the memorial service, and I wanted to go to the funeral, but we had Urban Warrior coming up, and the battalion commander said no one could go to the funerals of the fallen. Pretty rough, right? So I had a company gunnery sergeant, Gunny Robertson, so he was a true leader. Harder than woodpecker lips, but the guy, he knew it. He knew how to lead Marines. He could see I was hurting. He told me, hey, you got 4 days. So he gave me 4 days to drive from basically Riverside, California to Uvalde, Texas and back. But we made it. Drove down there, paid our respects to the family, attended the funeral, and then launched our way back. But, that kind of started everything with the Marine Corps. Told me to, hey, these things happen, suck it up, right? So, but what they don't understand is you suck it up and you push it deep down, and, it's like that rowboat, and, you're out in a rainstorm and it's filling with water and you're trying to bail it out, but you're also trying to row at the same time. Eventually, it's raining so hard that boat's filling up and you can't bail it, and, the rowboat's moving slower and slower and slower. You're not getting to your destination because it's getting heavier and heavier and heavier, laden down with water, and eventually that thing's just going to sink, right? And that's what happened, right? Through my combat deployments, making life and death decisions, A lot of them that just don't go the way that you want them to go, that happen day in and day out multiple times a day. Dealing with your failures and losses, making decisions that cost Marines lives, holding Marines in your arms, holding children in your arms, while their souls are being taken away from them. And you said you get done and you push it down deep and you tell yourself to suck it up, and I don't know how many times in combat I told Marines, hey, we don't have time for this shit, suck it up, the enemy's out there, we got to go take the fight to them, right? And if I ever said that to you and you're watching this video, I apologize, but that's kind of what I was taught, and that's how I thought we should lead. And there's a time for that, but there's also a time for grief, and we should have made time for that. After that, dealing with the Marines committing suicide, I've probably lost just as many Marines to suicide since I've ended my combat operations than I did in the last couple deployments. You lose your tribes. So those that you went to combat with, you kind of, get separated and you don't really stay in contact with them too much, So all of these things keep piling up, and that's just more rainwater that's going in that rowboat, and you're trying to bail it out. And, eventually, life stressors, if you're going through a rough marriage or you're having a rough time at work and all that, and you're all this stuff that's buried down deep, eventually it's going to start spilling out and that rowboat's going to start going down. So, you need to go out and you need to seek help, right? And that's what I did. So I went out, 2018 or whatever, started seeking treatment, had a wonderful counselor, spent about 1.5 years seeking counseling, or seeing a counselor, and, working through some things. And I'm going to tell you, counseling is not awesome. Like, the end result is generally awesome, but going through it sucks, right? And I understand why people quit, because it's difficult, right? But you can't have that quitter mindset, right? If you made it that far, you got to keep going, right? So you start unpacking things, and there's things that you're going to unpack that you didn't even bother you before, So you're focused on this one thing, and you're doing exposure therapy or EMDR or something like that. You're focused on this one thing, and you start unpacking that. Well, it's tied to a bunch of other things. So now you're focused. Now you're worrying about this, and you tell that your doctor, your counselor, whatever. You're like, well, now this is bothering me, and it hasn't bothered me for 20 years. Well, that's just because you kept it deep down, right? So, and they're linked together, but. Unfortunately, when I retired, I couldn't see that counselor anymore. Yeah, Department of Defense, even though I had TRICARE and all that kind of stuff, said, you're not allowed to see this counselor anymore because you're now retired. So I went through a couple counselors after that because we didn't jive, right? We just didn't work out well together. So I fired them. Yes, you can fire your counselors and you can go find another one. If you're not, after a couple sessions you're not working with your counselor, then I suggest you do that, right? And it's not, if they're telling you things that you don't want to hear, that doesn't mean that your counselor's not working. Sometimes you just got to suck it up, and you got to understand that they're telling you the hard truths, and you just don't want to hear them, right? But no, these ones were just we just didn't sync up. So, and then I went several years without having a counselor because of I thought that maybe I'd hit the needle in the haystack with the first one. When Brandon took his life last year, it hit me hard. That was sorry. That was a battle buddy. That's my boy. And the ultimate warrior, so like he's the guy that I talk about, like when I talk about the warrior's burden, and I'm addressing this for me, but this there's a lot of warriors out there, and he's one of them. And so when I look at it and I'm like, if this guy can do it, then anybody can do it, right? So I was like, I got to go back in and see counseling. So it took a little while through the VA, but I got back into counseling, and the counselor I have now is phenomenal. Right, we go in there, and again, unpacking stuff is not different. Sometimes I go in there and I straight up tell him, yeah, I don't want to be here, and he knows it, right? So he actually says it's pretty funny because he has no idea what when I go in there what we're gonna get, right? Because I have my facial expression when I go in is the same every single time, right? And I told him it's just because I really don't want to be there. Right? But on days that I go to the gym first and then go there, it's better. But if I don't go to the gym that day, then it's pretty rough. So, but we're unpacking stuff, and it's gotten to the point now that I can talk freely about some issues that I've had in the past with my wife, that I've had buried for 15, almost 20 years, that I couldn't share with anybody. I couldn't share with anybody that wasn't there, right? It was, but now, so I'm opening up to the rest of my support network, some of the things that I'm feeling and stuff, and the elation that you get when you can open up to the people around you because you are receiving the help, and the impact that it has on you and the control it has on your life is far reduced compared to where it was when I first started, right? So, what I'm trying to say is, go out there, get your treatment. Don't go it alone, right? It's, get your support network around you. And if you don't have one, fucking hit me up. Man, I'll be your biggest coach in the world, right? So hit me up. Talk on the phone. If you don't have my phone number, message me, freaking, and I'll give you my phone number. We can, whatever you need. My brothers and sisters out there, whatever you need. Last thing I want to leave you with. In the words of Marcus Elevation Taylor, you woke up this morning, someone else didn't. You're here for a reason. You're here for a reason. So let that sink in. Now let's fucking go. So sorry I lied. That wasn't the last thing. So last week, good Marine and buddy of mine, Jared Schrock, he gave me a shout out on his podcast, and he does something where he just kind of mentions some veterans and their social media, helping them, I guess, get a little bit bigger, and get some exposure. So I thought that was something that I would incorporate. So Jared, thank you. And Jared Schrock, outstanding Marine leader. So I worked with him at Motor Transport Instruction Company. He was a young butter bar lieutenant at the time, but he was one of those guys you just like when you see him, that the guy had the intangibles to be an outstanding leader of Marines. So he did his time there. He's a captain now in the United States Marine Corps Reserve, and I hope they realize what a great asset they have at their disposal, because the dude's phenomenal. But if you're into NASCAR and stuff like that, you can go over to his podcast. It's Two Tires and Fuel Only, and I'll leave a link in the description on YouTube for you to go there. And one last one that I also wanted to throw out there. This Marine, so I was in 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines with him. Did a deployment to Okinawa. When we came back, he didn't have enough time to do the deployment to Afghanistan with us, and so they deemed these guys STD, short-term deployables, and yeah, horrible name, right? So they didn't have enough time to deploy with us, but they had enough time to deploy with 1-3. So about a third of our company was sent over to 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines, Lava Dogs, and so he went out to 1-3, did the Battle of Fallujah. He wrote a book about it. The book is Lava Dogs. Moose, it's by Charlie Moose. bought this book when you first published it, but I hadn't read it until this last week. I just emotionally, mentally, I wasn't prepared to read it, just because, you know, I knew what you guys encountered, and I knew that, you know, a lot of the casualties that you guys took over there were some of my guys, but some of the guys that our brothers from 3-3. So, yeah, if y'all get a chance, read the book. It's amazing. It's written by a grunt, self-published, so it's the true account of what a grunt does in the Marine Corps, right? So it's just an awesome read. So yeah, Lava Dogs by Charlie Moose. You can find it on Amazon, and I'll put a link in the description below. Thanks.